you have unlimited listening, so you can listen to as many books as you want, which enables people to actually listen to more than one book at the same time. So now we've been talking a lot about Kitab Sawti and what we do, but it's also interesting to understand the role of publishers and authors as we build the Arabic book market. I think it's a unique opportunity for publishers and authors to take part of it and be on the journey. As I see it, the main reasons why a publisher or author should engage in the audiobook market is that it can create new revenue streams that they don't have today. Audiobooks is a very good way to reach a bigger audience. Distribution is a challenge in the market today, and with audiobooks, distribution is obviously not a problem because you can download the app and listen, no matter if you're here in Abu Dhabi or if you're in US or in Stockholm. It also prolongs the sales period of the titles. If you're in a book fair or in a bookshop, you have a natural limitation of space, so you cannot have all the books with you to the book fair, or you cannot have all the books on the best shelf in the bookstore. But when it comes to digital libraries, you can actually have 10,000 or 50,000 audiobooks in the app. So what we have seen in the Swedish audiobook market is that old titles sometimes become titles that might not be new or trendy enough to fit in the bookstore, but when they are available as audiobooks, people still, for some reason, find it and listen to it several years after it was hot enough to be in the bookstore. So how do Kitab Sawti cooperate with publishers and authors? And first of all, we think that the publishers and authors are a very important part of building the audiobook market. In the end, authors are the ones actually writing the content. So if authors don't write a lot of good content, we have a problem because then we have nothing to sell. And publishers has been around in the market for many years. They know the customers well, they know the authors well, and they know what works and what doesn't work. So from our side, we see both publishers and authors as important partners as we build the Arabic audiobook. Practically how we work with them today is that we produce and distribute their books as audiobooks. So we approach publishers, authors, and we ask for the permission to produce and sell their book as an audiobook. And then we share the royalty with them based on the revenue that their book generates. We can also act as a production company if there is a publisher who wants to invest and produce their own audiobook. So in that case, we produce the book for them, they own the MP3 file, and then they can sell it through Kitab Sawti and any other platforms that they want as well. So to finalize, what I want you to take with you from today is these 3 points. We want to make high quality audio entertainment and knowledge accessible for everyone in Arabic. I want everyone to have equal access to these amazing audiobooks that we do. We want to build and lead the development of the Arabic audio market, which we do very good today, and we want to continue to do that. We also want to continue to build an outstanding team that can bridge the gap between the Sweden and the Arabic world. Today we have 9 nationalities in our company. Today we have 1 Egyptian and 1 Palestinian here. It's sometimes challenging to have a team with 9 different nationalities, cultures, and everything. But I think if we manage to do it in the right way, it's also extremely rewarding. The diversity and the dynamic that we can create in the team when we have so many different ideas from different perspectives can result in can be a very good end result if we manage it in the right way. So, welcome to join the ride. Thank you very much. Everyone for coming here today.
Can you use the mic?
Sorry?
Mic. Use the mic, please.
Mic? Really?
For the camera. Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Can you decrease a little bit? Hello. Yeah. Thank you very much for coming here today. I will spend the next 20 minutes to tell you the story about Kitab Sawti and how we ended up where we are, what we have done, and so on. If you have any questions during the way, feel free to ask. So I would like to start by introducing myself. My name is Sebastian Holt. I am from Stockholm, Sweden, and studied business in Uppsala University and then South Korea. My earlier background, I started a ski travel company, which we ran for 10 years, organizing ski trips from Sweden to the Alps. And then I worked for a media company, doing online media and broadcasting. And the last work I had before Kitab Sawti was as head of business development for a Swedish audiobook company targeting schools. And we started Kitab Sawti in the beginning of 2016, so that's a little bit more than 2 years ago. Now, the first question that I always get is why a Swedish guy ended up doing audiobooks in Arabic. And the truth is that Arabic is the second biggest language in Sweden. When I was working for that Swedish audiobook company, I met a teacher who asked me for audiobooks in Arabic. And at first I didn't understand why they wanted audiobooks in Arabic because we are in Sweden. And then she explained to me that we have a lot of Arabic speaking students and they want to have audiobooks in Arabic for them as well. So that's why I started to search for audiobooks in Arabic and couldn't find anything. We found a little bit on YouTube and SoundCloud and so on, but we found no one that is actually doing audiobooks in Arabic in a professional way. So we did more and more research. We talked to a lot of publishers. We went to Frankfurt Book Fair to speak to publishers, and we couldn't really find any good reason why it doesn't exist. So after more and more research, people explained to me that Cairo and Beirut are the two literary hubs in Middle East. I think I spoke to almost 100 people in Stockholm, Arabic speakers in Stockholm, to like learn more about it. And all of them said that, but you should go to Cairo or you should go to Beirut. So I flew down to Cairo in April 2016. Met Ahmed, who's still working with us today. On the picture here on the right side we see Ahmed. And Ahmed, who is also here today, and Ahmed Mahanna here was actually the first really good author that we signed with. On Tahrir Square, 3 o'clock in the night, 6 hours before my flight back to Stockholm. So we signed that, we agreed on Tahrir Square. Then I went back to the hotel, took my bag and went straight to the airport. So yeah, me and Ahmed spent a lot of time to talk to publishers in Cairo. I was there for 2 weeks, and then I went to Beirut and did the same thing. The reactions that we got from the market was very different. Some people loved it. They say, we love audiobooks, this is perfect. And some people said, this will never work because Arabs don't read. And I thought, what do you mean Arabs don't read? There are 400 million Arabs. Of course they read. And even if they don't read, it doesn't really matter because this is audiobooks, so they are going to listen. So we continued the work, and it's very nice to be here today and fun to see how the Arabic audiobook market has developed since that time. That's exactly 2 years ago, more or less. And today, well, yesterday we had a roundtable discussion here with 4 Arabic audiobook companies, and there are more, there will be more. And it's very nice to see how the Arabic audiobook market So I will explain to you a little bit why I think that the Arabic audiobook market will work. First of all, we see a huge demand of high quality digital content in Arabic. I read somewhere that 1% of the content online is in Arabic, while 10% of the internet users are Arabic speakers. So there's a big gap in access to high quality content in Arabic. Could you take it back? Is it too hard? Okay. Second of all, Arabic is a very communicative culture. Arabs love to read, to talk and discuss. In Sweden we sit down, we are quiet and we read, but Arabs are much more verbal. And you also have the tradition of hakawatis, so it's a very strong hakawati tradition that we have. Third, it's a young population and the smartphone penetration is growing very fast. Four, people spend a lot of time in traffic. In Cairo, you have a commuting time every day. Same in Dubai, Abu Dhabi. Hello? Yeah, okay. Number five, Arabic is a very rich language. It makes it more complicated for us when we produce audiobooks, but it also adds an extra dimension to the experience for the user, which we don't have in English or Swedish, for example. So it's more complicated when we produce the audiobooks with tashkil and different dialects and so on. But I think that the end experience from the user can be so much more than just someone reading a book for you. And last but not least, there is a lot of support from the government here in UAE, KSA, different initiatives to support the intellectual and cultural movement going on in the region. And I think that's very helpful if we're going to develop the whole industry and produce more books and more content, both as audio and written. Those initiatives are very good and very much needed to show people and help them to be able to develop themselves and actually take time to create and learn how to write books. So, my conclusion is that the Arabic audiobook market will work. Minutes listen on Kitab Sawti has been growing steadily since we started, and for me that's a sign that people actually like what we do. This is my It Will Work 1 out of 2, and my It Will Work 2 of 2 is the feedback that we have from users. We get a lot of positive feedback on social media, Twitter, Facebook and so on, and in the surveys that we do, 9 out of 10 would recommend Kitab Sawti to their friends. So this for me is a proof that it does work. People do like to listen to our audiobooks. Then the next question will be, are they also willing to pay? Or how much are they willing to pay? And that we don't know yet, but by time I think the market will develop, and I'm sure that the Arabic audiobook market can be a sustainable industry in a few years. So what is Kitab Sawti today? Kitab Sawti is an audiobook app accessible for everyone, anywhere, anytime. Users download the app, they register an account, and then you have access to almost 1,000 high quality audiobooks in Arabic. We have both international titles such as Dan Brown and local authors like Ahmed Mohammed. We are 100% focused on Arabic. We do nothing else. We publish new audiobooks every month. So, and we also have these curated lists with recommendations based on what people like, what people listen to. And the consumers have access to a limited catalog for free, and then if they want to access the whole catalog with all the books, then they pay a subscription. These are a few of the publishers and publishers that we cooperate with and titles that we have. Today we cooperate with more than 130 publishers in the region. Basically all of the best ones. And here are a small selection of the titles that we have. So you can see that in these examples we have both the Arabic bestsellers as well as international titles, but in Arabic. And for the next presentation we will have Dardawan here as well. We have users in over 100 countries, and we have 3 offices, one in Stockholm where the headquarters is, Dubai and Cairo. So we launched a beta version of the app in July, and we did that to learn more about what the users like and what they do. So far we had more than 300,000 users participating during the beta period. We have spent a lot of time to do A/B testing, surveys, interviews, and analyze the data to understand more about which books they like, what they don't like, categories, dialects, and so on. And there's a lot of interesting data to dig into to really understand what people want to hear more about. Some of the findings that we did during this beta period is that 73% listen while they multitask. So multitasking can be driving, cooking, going to the gym, something similar. It's equally popular among men and women, which is a little bit different if we look at the international audiobook market, where a clear majority of the users are mid-aged women. In Sweden, for example, I think two-thirds or something like that of all the audiobook users are women between 40 and 50, which is clearly different here, but maybe that's also because the demographics are different here than in Sweden and US. So almost 80% of our users today are between 18 and 34. And then the fantastic discussion about the different dialects, which I think I had with almost everyone since I started Kitab Sawti, and how to deal with the Fusa slang and so on. My conclusion is that the preference is very personal. It depends very much on the book as well. If you prefer the Egyptian dialect or the Lebanese dialect, most of the books are written in Fusa, so then we produce them in Fusa. But if they have parts in the local slang, then we do those parts in Egyptian slang, for example, Lebanese slang. We also found out that 2 out of 3 listen to more than one book at the same time, which might be a little bit different than normal reading behavior. So maybe if people listen before they're going to sleep, they listen to a boring book, maybe. And if they listen while they drive, they listen to other books also. So with our model...
I'm asking because probably some regional differences in terms of, preferences of the readers in topics and that you see in the US are going to be replicated with different topics in Latin America, including Brazil. And I'm somehow curious to know if you are detecting or sensing ideology sort of infiltrating Wattpad in a way, these discourses about, you have it in the US, these new brands of racism and, because, in the same way that, anyone is free to create content and free to circulate certain ideas that are not very, edifying. So how do you deal with that when you see, hatred or anything like that coming into the platform?
That's a great question, and I think it's something that Alan, our founder, and the whole company takes really seriously. I think that if you go on Wattpad, the one thing that I didn't mention, I should have, is that it is an overwhelmingly positive community, that it is not a YouTube or Reddit site where we really take, I think that to be able to create in a safe space is very important for our writers, especially being the age that they are, that we have a huge trust and safety team who's always out looking to make sure the community remains positive. But it honestly, there's always going to be the odd troll who's coming into a community, but we work really, really closely with our community to make sure it maintains a positive spirit. And I think that, like freedom of speech is very important to the Wattpad ethos as well, of making sure that that happens. And that's how we're getting many diverse voices, etc. But I think for the most part, especially as well because it is fictionalized content for the most part, you're not seeing the same issues that are happening in Twitter, for example, where there are these agendas that are coming through and kind of really alienating other users. That it's happening less so on the platform just because it's fictional, but. I think that we work really hard to make sure it maintains to be a safe spot, because if it wasn't, you know, you're not going to get that freedom to publish. And I think that idea that you are creating something in a community that people are responding to well, so we make sure it's a priority for us.
Just a very quick remark on that. Do you, if there is some content that you judge is perhaps a little sensitive, do you label it in a certain way so that people are aware in advance?
Yeah, so as you know, romance is very popular on Wattpad. I think that we have strong guidelines for what would be mature romance and what would be filtered out of a search for a user under a certain age. You know, more of a 50 Shades of Grey type of story versus, you know, a Twilight or something. And then we have content that we have to take down as well, just knowing that it's not appropriate for users, or it's made some kind of infringement on what our codes of content is.
What about in India? I mean,
Yes.
would you tell us something about it?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it absolutely is, and it's growing very quickly. I think what we had found at the outset was that it was still primarily English language content that was most popular in India, and I think that part of that, I think, is demographic and economic demographic. But yeah, we did actually a contest with the UN last year to do a digital writing contest. And that really sparked growth in Hindi language content that was going. But it's growing at a really nice pace. I think that we've yet to establish an official partner in India from a publishing standpoint. But absolutely, yeah, we're growing at a really nice pace there.
Okay, then, do you have a question? Oh, okay.
How do you monetize
Sure. So there's a couple of different ones. I think that to start with, you know, like every social network, we do serve ads. I think we have a team that has been working on the brand solution side for quite some time, where that's both programmatic, but it's also native advertising, where, you know, we work with Coca-Cola to have some of our top Wattpad writers write a story from one of the characters' perspectives about whether they were naughty or nice for Christmas, or something like that, where we have those type of brand relationships, both on brand level but also entertainment. We also just opened up subscription, so Wattpad will always be free for anybody who wants it to be free, but there is an option that's ad-free where you're paying a certain amount every month to get access directly to that content. And then Wattpad Studios as well is a new revenue source for us, where we're working to take stories out into the market, where we would act as a co-publisher or a co-producer on these stories. So After, for example, which has been a hit in 40 different markets, a worldwide bestseller, we're seeing the success of that the same way a publisher would.
I remember when pocketbooks started in Germany, there were publishers who only did pocketbooks, and the publishers who did the hardcover sold the rights to the pocketbook publishers. And then it took off really well, and then very soon there was only one or two pocketbook publishers left, because the big publishers did also the pocketbook editions. So my question is, when will Wattpad also be a traditional publisher?
Yes, that is in the plans at some point. I think that the idea really is to become a full stack entertainment company, the same way that we have, we're working with producers on the entertainment side to take films out to the market. If you think about it, we have an audience of 65 million users. We already have that network in itself. Is that to become full stack is I think an inevitable goal for us at some point.
Yeah, so that really creates an interesting situation. If we think that Amazon is now also publishing, Wattpad publishing, not yet, but probably coming soon. So that really creates a new market situation. Anyway, thank you, and that would be also enough for another discussion round, and perhaps we can have these discussions on an individual basis with you. Thank you very much to our speaker. Thanks for sharing your knowledge and your experiences with us, and thank you for coming and listening. And just for your information, Kelly is going to speak at 8, also on a similar topic, but with HarperCollins.
So I think there was something in the formula of Wattpad that hit. One, because we were a young audience. Two, we were social, and there's another thing about the Filipino reader and the Filipino audience in general. We're pretty much, I think I said it in one of the talks, I think, in another place, we're like fans. When we gravitate towards an author or a celebrity or a book, it's with absolute reverence and love, I think. And so you have an absolute loyal fan base to that writer. Once he's captured an audience, they own the audience for a while. And so that's why it might be because it's successful throughout several platforms aside from Wattpad and into TV and into the printed page. And there's, I think, that thing going on. And there's one thing I wanted to say, and the theme. I think the predominant theme in the Wattpad books that we were seeing that were absolutely successful, one, it's romance, and there's the protagonist, and in the office we call it's Bella. When we read any Wattpad story, it seems to have a specific character and a specific kind of woman in their romance, and it's Bella in Twilight. She's the virginal vamp, I think, that's connecting. And I can go into that, but I'm not sure I want to. But that's the kind of story that we're seeing in the Wattpad books that seems to pull the audience in. So that's the one explanation I can give.
The publisher, how do you work with Wattpad?
I wish I could work more with Wattpad actually. However, okay, whenever I meet a Wattpad author in Manila, and we ask about, so who are you giving your next book to? I discover a very tight contract within the publisher and the author, and it's usually for a term of, let's say, 5 years. The royalty rates aren't very big, but the quantities that the publisher publishes is between 8,000 to 20,000 copies on the first run. And I do know that they would pick up an author if they have at least 500,000 hits on a Wattpad, and Kelly is right. There seems to be a formula of success that they're able to tap that publishers weren't privy to before, and that's something that lessens the risks that any businessman would want. I really am waiting for this phenomenon to go down. Do you see it happening soon?
It's okay, we'll talk after. We'll set up a deal.
Because the name of the session was actually Mining for Gold, so looking for talent. How do we find talent as a publisher? We've heard how Wattpad is finding talent. How do you find talent?
Well, okay. For one, we have a particular imprint wherein a Wattpad story may work. But unlike other publishers, we would edit this particular book and not come out with it as is. Though there was a publisher who picked up a Wattpad book during the early stages of this, when they were So when he picked up the work, they were about to edit it when the publisher said, no, don't edit. That's how people loved it. Then we should just bring it out as is. And I made the mistake of going over to the other panel, and that panel was, are editors still needed? Vis-a-vis this panel we're in, we have, and I do know that that publisher was horrifyingly correct in that not just raw and an editor's nightmare came out and it was a hit. So that one was against how perhaps a traditional publisher would look for talent. That is an interesting way of looking at curation, and Roland Barthes' idea that the author is dead, the reader, long live the reader. And that I think is Wattpad's strength, that it is per reader, and the metrics are correct in that they are able to predict what might be the next big thing, and there is an element of respect for the reader and the lessening of the role of the editor. I see do you see the hesitation of the way I say this? Because I'm not quite, and I guess coming from the traditional publishing background, I'm also trying to wrap my mind around phenomena such as this. So that's one. We did pick up. We have an author called, and they're not quite an author. They do illustration with writing. They're called 8-bit fiction, and they're doing pixelized art with writing that feels like poetry, not in the traditional sense of literary poetry, but in the Philippines they call it poetry with feels, and it's emotional and romantic, and in that sense we picked them up because of the metrics behind them, X number of followers, X number. So that's one. However, we're making sure that the format we bring out in print is not exactly what's already out there, so that even people who are out there who are reading the digital format will also get the print format. And we find ourselves slowly doing that all the time with our content. If we want to exist in print, we cannot put out the same thing that's out there. And I think for our particular brand, because we are primarily a mid-list publisher, and we were known to be we were known not as commercial publishers first, but literary publishers, and with several imprints, we can't seem to marry at the moment something raw and coming out with it as is as of yet. But we find ourselves sort of going down into a level that might reach out to the reader more than I think what Angle used to be before. So yes, we're looking at the metrics now. Yes, we're looking at formats that might create synergy between traditional print and digital, and it's all because of the phenomenon of content.
I was just wondering, would you like to comment on that?
No, I think that's absolutely right, and I think there's always going to be a balance and room for both, right? I think that on the same level, there is something exciting about the idea that a Wattpad story can be made new a little bit from a publisher's eye and giving it that polish that, you know, certainly the writers welcome from our experience. These Wattpad writers who are so eager to get published, you know, their favorite thing ever would be to be a New York Times bestseller. They still have very traditional aspirations despite an untraditional beginning. And I think that for the most part that they are looking for that. I think it's really just finding that balance of maintaining the voice and raw spirit of the story, and also giving it that professional eye where it undoubtedly is a better read, I think, when you're having that professional eye dedicated to it. But yeah, I think it's always a tension that would go on.
So just understand when we talk about mining for gold and where one finds the talent, what kind of role obviously you don't work with agents, right? You don't need them. What kind of role do agents play in finding talent in your publishing business?
In the Philippines right now, there's no literary agent to my...
There's no literary agent?
There's none, yeah. So unfortunately, most publishers deal with the writers directly. And I'm not sure that's a good thing as well. One, I think there is a lack of professionalism in the way they do contracts, number one. Number two, there's also there lacks the middleman who is able to hold the hand of both the publisher and the writer, and maybe from the publisher's view, help the writer manage his expectations about the business, what he might be getting, and his own thing, his own writing. That said, the agent's role is very important, I think, in that to be able to get the best deal for the author. And I think for the Wattpad writer in particular, they are very young, 16-year-old, for example. I do know that one of the Wattpad books that became a movie, it's called Diary ng Pangit. It translates to A Diary of an Ugly Girl, which became a hit, became a movie. It sold, 20 or something, million. It was huge. But for that very first publisher who just buys and pays a one-time fee, I think that is terrible for the author who didn't get into a royalty-based contract. So yes, I think there's room for agents in the Philippines, and for the author's sake, for huge hits like this, for very young authors, I think yes, they're necessary. But sadly, the agent doesn't exist in the Philippines.
Okay, that would be another. We would need another session to understand why they don't exist. Yeah, but perhaps you from the audience have a question to one of our speakers. No?
Well, are you present in Brazil? I couldn't figure out in the map. I just came when you were scrolling up.
Yes, so we are. South America has been a really, really popular spot for Wattpad over the last year or so. We believe that as we're expanding in slowly, that really will take off in a bigger way. We don't have a direct relationship right now with a publisher, but I know that my colleague who is much more on the publishing side, I'm a little bit more on the entertainment side, was just back from Bologna and London Book Fair and has had early discussions. But yes, absolutely. And I think that you see the popularity, for Spanish language, it will eventually overtake English on the platform probably in the coming year or two, just the trend that it's moving right now. But even Portuguese has really been at a really nice pace.
Right.
To date, out in the marketplace, with many more coming. English language predominantly, though I said international is a really big push for us this year. And sorry. Thank you. So if you have I already talked about HarperCollins. Hachette Brands is probably our first international success story for publishing, where we're working with them to take directly both English language as well as French language content into the French marketplace. So it's been going really well. We have about 12 titles slated that are coming out, and we've really seen that success happen where a ton of writers are excited about the content. Oh, thank you. Yes, so that is definitely probably one of our strongest areas is teen and romance. Though I think even yeah, so romance and teen are definitely the strongest. So even if you look in the science fiction or thriller genres, you have a very robust group of 50 million stories sometimes that you're pulling from. But I think that just knowing the nature of our audience and what's been translating well, I think it's true of traditional publishing as well, that romance is number one and probably will continue to be forever. Similar in Wattpad for what's happening. And so when we are looking at stories, and I think that knowing that the title of the session is Mining for Gold, of saying how are you finding these writers, what are we doing with them, knowing that we have 2.6 million writers every month, we're not talking to all of them, but I think that our data is really giving us some good insight into saying which titles are popping and which ones do we really want to pay attention to. So we run a talent management program within Wattpad Studios to say these are the writers that we have direct relationships with, we're already working with them, we're cultivating them, we're taking them out for opportunities in the traditional marketplace. We've got about 250 Wattpad stars right now, but we're talking to about 1,000 different, I know, I'm sorry I beat you to it. That's good. And so just a short selection of some of our Wattpad stars. We really cross every category and we're starting to get into different languages there. But this is the top tier in how we are identifying from a data perspective, but also from an engagement perspective of which writers are really hitting that engagement level where fans are really evangelizing the content in other places.
You're saying that you have readers in the UAE as well,
Yes.
and I presume other Arab countries as well.
Sure.
Are any of those authors Arabic?
In the Wattpad Stars program, they currently aren't, just because we're expanding it beyond English, but it's happening slowly. So Spanish is just beginning, but there will be a time when there's absolutely Arabic writers of influence on the platform who are building a great community, and they might be getting publishing deals as well, but they don't have an official talent management program yet. But they probably will be in the coming years. And so this is just a story of how are we detecting these big hits, and I think that we have a data team. It's interesting because aside from sales and publishing, our data team is probably one of the most robust in the company, of people who are always looking in at different metrics, of which metrics. I think rereading behavior is one of the most important things that we can see, saying who's going back again and again and again to the same story. It gives us an idea of that kind of Twilight fan, of somebody who's really active and engaged and is going to be a valuable kind of spreader of the content. So Chasing Red 2 years ago had come onto the scene and was acting like a bigger story than it was. So you're seeing a ton of engagement from people, a lot of comments, even though there weren't that many reads or chapters published yet. And so our data person came up to us and said, you got to watch this story. 2 years later, it's the most read story on the platform. It's got 180 million reads right now and is getting published into the traditional marketplace, and a film deal is shortly coming as well. So we're really able to see early on when there's something exciting happening to a title.
Do you know why that's happening? Do you know why, like that book, why it's so popular?
If I knew that, I would probably be writing them. I think that there is something that I think you can tell once you're into it and you're seeing the fan engagement, that sometimes they just hit on something. It could be that it's a character or a theme. We definitely see themes take off, so things like cannibalism was very popular a few years ago, dark mermaids, there's little tropes that will go and spread, but often it's the writer's voice, their way with engaging back and forth with people that goes really well. It also helps if you have a regular serialization schedule. So if you're serializing more than once a week, it helps keep up the cadence and get people excited. Another great example of that is White Stag. So it's not always, you're going to find stories, our most popular story on the platform has 1.8 billion reads. You're also going to find stories that maybe only have 50,000 that are really, really special and that we want to know about early on as well. And so White Stag is a great example of this. The writer is very young, from Illinois. She wrote this story when she was 19 years old. And we were seeing that it was being read six and a half times longer than any other fantasy story on the platform, but it only had about 30,000 reads against it. So we grabbed it and we took it out to publishers and saying this is really special. So it's coming out actually with St. Martin's Press in January as a 3-book trilogy. It's going to be their big book. But those are the types of metrics we look for, of just saying that this writer probably wouldn't have access to anywhere else to kind of spread the word, so we're helping kind of mediate that process to getting them into a traditional deal. And then I'll be really quick here, but beyond titles specifically, when we're looking at data, we're also looking across broader trends. So when we're looking at a larger group of titles, we can see, you know, what type of horror genre is getting really popular in Germany right now? What is really trending in UAE? You know, what types of romance are doing well? Which ones are tapering off? Are werewolves still as popular, or vampires more popular? So you can see over the years that trends do go up and down, but things like dark mermaids that we started to see a year ago or 2 years ago have really started to hit in the traditional marketplace. You see these stories about sirens that are coming up. Evil cops, I think this is more of a North American trend of cop as villain, but these types of things are starting to resonate among the audience, and I think that the nice thing about it is you're really getting a diverse voice that's authentic to the region that these writers are writing in, and that's really what readers are excited about, is to see these authentic voices coming through.
Do you see the possibility in the future of like getting profiles of Arab authors, like for example, for example in Egypt, where there's a lot of publishing houses and a lot of writers, and we know that from the news, we know that there's a lot of young people in Arab countries, and they are very well connected socially. So do you see that maybe a writer that is known socially, that you would do the same thing for him or her, like what you're doing in the US, is to help them if you see that they're being popular, then to approach Arab publishers and say to them, you should take a note of this person, they're really,
absolutely
really important, and if you publish them,
they're going to have a big audience
for you as, and be good for you as well.
Exactly, and that's what we're starting to do now. I think that region by region, we're trying to wait for that critical mass to happen to make sure that there's enough audience in that region. But absolutely, we're seeing that happen in, you know, Italian language, Spanish language, German language. We've got a deal just about closing. But absolutely, that's the idea, is that, you know, people want locally relevant stories and content. They don't want to read, you know, the Dr. Seuss and then just getting it translated into a new language. They want to have their own region's writers and seeing that cultivated. So absolutely, that's something that's in the plans for Wattpad in 2019. We just need to hire more people very quickly, which is happening. And then the last point I'll talk about is just we're able to see trends of popularity going up and down over the years. So you can see One Direction had been tremendously popular on Wattpad. You started to see it taper down a little bit. BTS, all the K-pop trend has been coming up. So we're starting to work with entertainment companies to say, you know, are your shows still popular? Here are what people are saying about these shows. Are the topics as relevant? What is the new big thing? What is that early indication? So we really can see that signal, and we're starting to package up these insights to give them to entertainment companies. And then the last one, I'll talk about this one a little bit, is Wattpad Presents. So in the Philippines, we are very popular. It's been a wonderful time for us there for the last little while. It's where we're seeing the biggest growth in user base. So about 4 years ago, we collaborated with TV5 as a television network in the Philippines to do Wattpad Presents, where the idea is every week a Wattpad story is taken off of Wattpad and made into a 4x22 short show, mostly in the teen and romance area, but it was a tremendous hit on the platform. It was doing very well. TV5 did just get sold to be sports only, so that's going away, but Wattpad Presents it's a great example of how a data-driven model of predicting stories translates really well into the audience. We're doing the same thing with NBC Universal in the US, where we have 4 shows right now in development under the same idea and model, where we're selecting content. This is a great example, Hawthorne Heights. The idea of this story, this writer is only 16 years old. She wrote a story from St. Louis that was kind of based in her hometown, that we found and really felt was an authentic story. It was something that she wasn't seeing on TV herself. And the diverse voices that we're trying to cultivate and get it into the market She would never have access to NBC without us presenting that story. It's kind of an OC meets Moonlight, really great look at inner city St. Louis life. So that one is one that Universal Cable Productions has picked up. And then I feel like I'm running out of time, so I'll just leave it there. It's good. Great.
Thank you very much. Now I'm glad that our other colleague has arrived from the Philippines. As you've heard, Philippines is a very important and growing market for Wattpad. So Andrea Pasion Flores is the CEO of Unveil Publishing, one of the biggest publishing houses in the Philippines, and which belongs to National Bookstores, which is the biggest book chain company in the Philippines. And she's been working in publishing and as agenting also with the government to promote publishing for many, many years. So, what is your view? And please share a little bit of your thoughts.
Well, Wattpad is really phenomenal in the Philippines. Probably because the Philippines has a very young market. So the average age is between 20 to 24 years old. So I think the below 30 audience of Wattpad really hit the Philippine market very strongly. It's also the place wherein there are more mobile phones than there are people. So there are like 107 million perhaps right now in population in the Philippines. And then you have more phones than people. It's like, I think, sheep in New Zealand. There's more sheep than people. So Wattpad was a platform that they flocked to, also because Wattpad was accepting almost everybody writing, including people who wrote in the vernacular. So those books that were published from Wattpad were seeing local language romance books written by very young people, picked up by a commercial publisher called Summit Books, which is one of them, yes, and I'm always pressured to say, why don't you look at Wattpad for content? So I do have young kids trolling Wattpad authors as well, and to see if there is someone out there who might be a fit for the Angle list.
Our other speaker is probably still on the way, so but before we lose too much time, we'll just start right now. I would like to welcome Kelly Steen, who came all the way from Toronto, long way, and just landed, so she's still awake, and we're very happy that she's still awake. She is the Director of Content Strategy and Operations at Wattpad Studios. She builds relationships with various entertainment studios and partners by connecting them with compelling content created by the Wattpad community. She activates, tracks and manages all partnerships that involve co-producing a Wattpad story into film, television and digital mediums. She also connects Wattpad's rising stars and leverages Wattpad's data and insights to help establish valuable partnerships for the studio team. Before joining Wattpad, Kelly managed online sales for Scholastic Canada, where she focused on helping launch Scholastic's ebook program and expanded their digital presence. So this is really a heavyweight in the industry, and Wattpad, a platform that Kelly is also going to introduce to us in a little while, is extremely popular. And we had asked another speaker to be with us today. She is from the Philippines, a publisher from the Philippines, because in the Philippines Wattpad is extremely popular. So we would have been really interested to hear her views on this. I suppose something went wrong here, so she's not here, but perhaps she will be joining us later. Anyway, but we'll start with Kelly and her presentation about Wattpad, and the name of the session is Mining for Gold. So we wanted to talk about how to find new talent. Please, over to you.
Thanks, Claudia. So we can just get started. So as Claudia said, my name is Kelly and I work at Wattpad Studios. For anyone who's unfamiliar with Wattpad, I'm going to give a quick introduction so that you can have an idea of what it is we actually do. Oh, just play too. Okay. Yeah. So Wattpad is the world's largest community of storytellers, and we're changing the way that people read and consume content all over the world, and I'm going to talk about how that is happening. Before anything else, here's a quick stat to give you an idea of Wattpad itself. So last month, people spent 15 billion minutes engaged on Wattpad stories, and to put that into context for you, that's more than people spent playing Candy Crush in the US, which is one of the most popular apps. So people are extremely engaged on the platform, and it's growing every day. And so what are people actually doing when they're on Wattpad? I think the three main things to keep in mind if you're not familiar is that Wattpad is serial, it's social, and it's mobile. So about 90% of our traffic is coming through mobile devices. That's where people are reading content on Wattpad, both online and offline. Oh, just, hi. That's okay. Come on up. Hi. Nice to meet you, Kelly. How are you? Good. Yes, so that's people reading content on Wattpad as the app, both online and offline, but that's actually also people creating content. So about 85 to 90% of our users who write content on Wattpad actually write it directly on their phones. So you can imagine people taking the subway or the bus to work are uploading a chapter, and every time they would upload a chapter and hit publish, a push notification would be sent to everybody who's currently reading that story. And I think this type of engagement really lends itself to serialization, which is what you really find is the prevalent way that people are creating on the platform. And this long-form, fictionalized serial content is creating, I think, a shared reading experience, because when everybody gets that same push notification and opens up their phone, you suddenly have a captive audience all reading together, and that creates a social moment where, similar to the days of event television when everyone was tuning in to watch Lost, they're now tuning in to actually read a book together, and you can contact and kind of work, connect with different readers together, but you can also actually connect with the creator itself. So I think for the first time, writers are able to connect with readers directly, and that is, for what it was once very transactional experience, now becomes an intimate moment where there's a lot of back and forth and engagement. And I think that that's really the heart of what Wattpad is the idea that it's a social place where writers can come and connect directly with their audience, and readers can come and comment directly on the line of a story, on the paragraph of a story. And that's how Wattpad has really spread and grown over the years, which is pretty amazing to see that it's all been organic.
Are the readers communicating to each other about the story they're reading and sharing thoughts and ideas about the story? Is that what the intention is?
You have to put the microphone to your mouth.
Is it their intention to talk about the story they're reading, share the ideas of what they're reading and how they translate it?
Exactly. So there's the ability to comment directly within a line, a paragraph, even a word of a text on Wattpad. So you might have one paragraph of a story that has 10,000 comments against it. And so you're going to see reactions and engagement that goes back and forth between all readers, but also the writer, saying that if all of these people are engaged in the story, they're trying to find out what happens next. Writers also leave comments within a story of saying, where do you think this should go? What do you feel about this character? You know, a left or right question, or just thanks for reading, you know, back and forth, and the engagement happens.
So they're developing the story as well, not just commenting on it.
The writer is still always developing the story. The readers always chime in with feedback, I think, but they're not actively kind of writing their own pieces. It's just leaving notes in the margins, kind of, if you think about it that way.
Are they leading the author to end it in a similar way, or is he already thought about it that way?
It depends on the writer, but we've got about 2.6 million writers every month on the platform. So some of them definitely take more audience consideration in, and other ones could be uploading a published book that's already been out and are just serializing it.
Doesn't it prevent the flow of the story from being there?
Well, you can either choose to click on a comment or not. Like if you wanted just to read the story as it were, you could see that maybe there's 10,000 comments, but you don't have to engage in them. Yeah. And if you wanted to disable the comments to have a clean reading experience, you can do that too. Yeah. And so that's really where we get to the idea that Wattpad is itself, it really is that social network for stories. The same way that video is for YouTube and Twitter is for news, Wattpad is that social element for stories. To give you an idea of our numbers, we average about 130,000 new signups every day. That's happening across the world. We've got about 65 million users at this point throughout the world. We're in virtually every country right now, except for China, as many social networks have been blocked. But everywhere else, we basically, yeah, absolutely. So we've got
Also in the UAE, yeah?
Yes, absolutely. But I checked, it's just under 100,000 users in UAE. But Arabic as a language is growing extremely quickly right now for us. I think often what we find is that one story, one writer will really seed a location for us. So it spreads across high schools, colleges, and you just see that happen. And then as more kind of readers get introduced, more writing happens just organically. So we really are a truly global reach. We have been growing. Philippines is obviously the most successful place that we've got, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later, and I'm sure Andrea can give some insight as well to why that's happening. But US is as well our largest market, just from a pure numbers perspective. But we're seeing tremendous growth in places like Indonesia, where it's going kind of 10x every month, and it's just feeding itself. We don't do any paid advertising, so this is all happening organically. Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah, mainly fiction. So we do have nonfiction and memoirs, but for the most part, it's long-form fictionalized content that we're seeing on the platform. And so how is this spread happening? What is this magic potion? And really it is that Gen Z millennial audience. So if you think about everyone young in your life and how densely connected they are through social networks, you can imagine the same thing on Wattpad. The nice thing is that when they're extremely engaged on Wattpad, they also are on Snapchat and Instagram, etc. So that social reach is really broadened throughout the world, and has allowed us to grow at that level. So this is probably my favorite Wattpad stat, is that every minute over 24 hours of reading is uploaded to the platform. And I think that it speaks to a misconception that we're always hearing about, is that young people don't read anymore, they don't buy books, they don't like to. We're seeing exactly the opposite, and I think that it just comes down to the idea that they want to read the way they want to be engaged. They want to be able to play a role in some way. They want to be able to give feedback. They want to be able to talk to other people. Often when we ask our readers what else they like to read, they say, oh, I don't read. So they don't really think about Wattpad as reading, even though that's what they're doing, and they're spending a ton of time doing it. So that's a neat little fact about Wattpad. And today we're sitting at about, this stat is a little bit old, we're sitting at about 500 million uploads right now, which is really phenomenal, as each upload really has this strong amount of data and audience built in behind it. So every story, we're collecting about 1 billion points of data every day across the platform, where you can kind of see where our audiences are building quickly, what's happening. So Wattpad itself is actually about 11 years old as an app-based company. The two founders are from Toronto. They just wanted to build something to read on their phones. Over this 10 years, once we found that we had probably one of the largest IP libraries in the English language world right now, and a tremendous amount of data behind these stories, and a built-in audience that wants to see it progress, it was a natural extension for Wattpad to play a role in entertainment. So just less than 2 years ago, Wattpad Studios was formed, and that really came as an incubator out of the base of the company. So at the outset there were 4 of us. There's now about 12 on the team who are working directly to take these Wattpad stories that have gained popularity out into the marketplace, both in entertainment and in publishing. So really our aim is to entertain the world with data-driven stories. I think that you'll find that's been a trend amongst many other areas of the world right now, but we really have been able to make a mark in the publishing industry and also in the entertainment space of taking these stories and putting them out to the traditional market, which is what readers are really excited about seeing. So very quickly, we've worked across entertainment domestically largely, though we're getting into international deals more and more over the last few months. We have deals with NBC, Universal, with HarperCollins, who we're going to speak with later today. to really dig in and get the best content that we can find. With Harper, for example, we're looking specifically at teen content for that all to come out. And why are publishers working with us this way? I think that the idea is that data really does give you a better chance of success. I think that the old world of just an editor's room or just a development and acquisitions room, you really aren't getting any insight into what's going on in a manuscript that people are loving. With a Wattpad story, you can look chapter by chapter to see where are people falling off, where is the highest reread happening, where are people getting most excited, which stories have an average session length of 2 hours versus 20 minutes. So we're really able to say this story is special, it's got a stickiness to it, and also we're billing 1 million readers who already love the story and kind of want to see it in paperback so they can buy it themselves. So we've got about 275 published titles. Yeah, that's okay.